In the year 2020, Beirut stood as a vibrant Mediterranean crossroad, a major seaport and a gateway to the Middle East. But on August 4th, a disaster years in the making struck without mercy. The largest non-nuclear explosion in modern history devastated Lebanon's capital, sending shockwaves across the globe. Behind the catastrophe lay a damning story of negligence, ignored warnings, and corruption that allowed hundreds to die and thousands to suffer. This catastrophic event exposed how a single explosion could cripple an entire city, revealing the deadly price paid when warnings go unheeded and accountability fails. For 6 years, a deadly cargo sat neglected at Beirut's port. The MV Rosis, a Moldovan flagged ship, had been abandoned there in 2014 after experiencing technical problems while en route from Georgia to Mozambique. Its cargo, 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, a chemical compound used in fertilizers and explosives. The ship's owner, a Russian businessman, declared bankruptcy, effectively abandoning the vessel and its dangerous cargo. Port officials transferred the ammonium nitrate to Warehouse 12, where it remained improperly stored for years. During this time, at least 6 letters were sent to Lebanese judicial authorities, warning of the danger posed by the stored chemicals. One letter, sent in December 2017, stated bluntly, "Due to the extreme danger posed by the stored items in unsuitable climate conditions, we reiterate our request to the port authorities to re-export the goods immediately to maintain the safety of the port and those working in it." These warnings went unheeded. Lost in a bureaucratic labyrinth, a political system plagued by corruption and sectarian divisions, the chemical time bomb continued to tick. On the morning of August 4th, port workers arrived for their regular shifts, unaware of the disaster that would unfold later that day. Routine activities continued around Warehouse 12, including welding work that was happening nearby. By early afternoon, a small fire had broken out in the warehouse. Firefighters were dispatched to the scene, 9 men and 1 woman, most in their 20s, unaware of what awaited them inside. They had not been informed about the dangerous materials stored there. Across the city, residents noticed smoke rising from the port area. Many grabbed their phones to document the scene, not imagining they were capturing the moments before one of the largest accidental explosions in history. In hospitals around Beirut, medical staff were already dealing with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had stretched healthcare resources thin. They were unprepared for the mass casualty event that was about to occur. At 6:07 p.m., the first explosion occurred. Smaller but still substantial, it sent a column of gray smoke into the sky and triggered car alarms throughout the city. Residents rushed to windows and balconies, capturing the scene on their phones, unwittingly placing themselves in danger. Exactly 33 seconds later, at 6:08 p.m., the main explosion occurred. The blast was so powerful, it registered as a 3.3 magnitude earthquake. The shockwave traveled at supersonic speed, shattering windows up to 10 kilometers away. A mushroom cloud, tinged with reddish-orange from nitrogen dioxide, rose above the city. The sound was heard as far away as Cyprus, 240 kilometers across the Mediterranean. In an instant, the port was transformed into an apocalyptic crater. Ships were tossed aside like toys. Grain silos, containing the country's primary food reserves, were torn open. The surrounding neighborhoods looked as if they had endured heavy bombing.
All the windows the stairs, everything went chaos. It was a nightmare. We felt that for the first time.
I heard a first explosion, something that shook the house, and then a second huge explosion. And I was worried about my kids and my wife. In my house, which is very far away from here, everything is broken. It is a catastrophe. I've never seen something like that.
In hospitals near the port, ceilings collapsed and medical equipment was destroyed. Staff were thrown across rooms by the force of the blast. Within minutes, injured citizens began pouring in, even as the hospitals themselves had sustained significant damage. Medical procedures had to be performed in parking lots, corridors, and by the light of mobile phones when power failed. All 10 firefighters who had responded to the initial fire perished instantly in the explosion. Port workers in the vicinity suffered severe injuries, with many losing their lives in the devastating blast. As night fell on Beirut, the scale of the catastrophe became apparent. Buildings across the city stood with their facades ripped away, exposing apartments like doll houses. Streets were carpeted with glass. Hospitals, already struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic, were overwhelmed with the injured. 4 major medical facilities were so damaged they could not accept patients. Families wandered the streets calling out names of missing loved ones. Others crowded around hospitals seeking information. The port area, once the economic lifeline of Lebanon, resembled a post-apocalyptic landscape. The psychological impact matched the physical devastation. A population already traumatized by civil war, political assassinations, economic collapse, and a pandemic now faced a new collective trauma. The explosion could not have come at a worse time for Lebanon. The country was already in the grip of its worst economic crisis in decades, with its currency having lost 80% of its value. Food insecurity was rising. The COVID-19 pandemic had strained an already fragile healthcare system. In the days following the blast, as shock gave way to anger, thousands of Lebanese took to the streets demanding accountability. They were met with tear gas. The government's promise of a swift investigation rang hollow to a population that had heard such promises before. Prime Minister Hassan Diab announced his cabinet's resignation 6 days after the explosion, acknowledging the deep-rooted corruption that had allowed such a disaster to occur. But in a country where political positions are allocated by sectarian quotas, many saw this as merely a reshuffling of the same deck. Today, the physical scars of the explosion remain visible in Beirut's landscape. Historic buildings that survived decades of civil war could not withstand the blast. The port crater serves as a stark reminder of the catastrophe. The investigation into the explosion has stalled repeatedly, mired in political interference. No high-ranking official has been held accountable, leaving survivors and families of victims without closure or justice. The Beirut explosion encapsulates Lebanon's larger tragedy, a beautiful country brought to its knees not by natural disaster, but by human negligence and corruption. It revealed the full cost of governmental failure, not just as an abstract concept, but as a direct threat to human life. Yet amid the rubble, signs of Beirut's legendary resilience emerged. Volunteers arrived from across the country to clean up. Community kitchens fed the displaced. International aid poured in, bypassing government channels. Beirut has been destroyed and rebuilt 7 times throughout its 5,000-year history. The port explosion marks the latest chapter in this ancient city's story of destruction and renewal. A wound still raw, a lesson still being learned, a call for change still echoing through its damaged streets.